Yay!
Hey, good morning. Welcome to B Cube Sunday morning. It is a great Sunday because it's the last Sunday of the year. And oh my God, what a year it's been. Donald Trump is not disappointed. Uh,
He's still
he's
alive. He's
Well,
disappointing. Yeah,
who,
he's still
who are you
alive.
talking about here? Because I'm sure his wife's probably a little disappointed.
Like,
oh God. There's probably if people were completely honest, there's a lot of people with a lot of wishes that there's a star up there that's been wished upon that's saying those people are sick. Um, and who is
um,
this? Donald Trump. So good morning, David.
hey, how are you? I'm still this side of the dirt, so I'm fine.
That's a good thing. And the same for Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm fighting kind of a headache this morning, so I may periodically cover one eye here that's closest to the light. But I'm here. Like David said, I'm still upright and on this side of the dirt. So and that's increasingly questionable these days. So
Well,
far
I'm
so
watching
good.
out for you.
So
That was a bad joke. God bless it.
That's all I kind
it's
of got these days.
Hey, that's the hat I bought to go set in Walmart and glare at the people with the anti-trans petitions.
Oh man.
Hey,
I, Yeah, Walmart, man. I can't remember the last time I've been to a Walmart, so I'm gonna keep it that way. That's your job. You go to Walmart. There's that dog in the background. We got to explain the dog, David, or people are gonna think
Oh
it's
yeah,
silly.
Charlie has some fluid on the lungs or around the heart or something, and he's taking medication for it. But he has learned that if he coughs like that, I mean, we can feed him, we can take him, I give him water, take him out for a walk, everything. It's psychological in that he has learned if he takes time to cough, somebody will give him attention. And if I turn around and say, Charlie, stop, he stops. So I know he's doing it as a learned behavior. Charlie, stop. So and believe me, if he were in any kind of physical discomfort, I would be right there for him. But I learned that it's like we just took care of everything, and he's still coughing, and I'm petting him, and as soon as I put a hand on him and pet him, he stops coughing. It's like, oh, really? So, and I learned that there was a veterinarian named Herb Tanzer who became a very effective trainer for Est and LifeSpring, and he would tell stories about things that he learned with the various dogs that would come in. And this little old Jewish couple brought in a dog who would cough when he wanted a treat, and Herb tells the story about how he would hold the dog up and he'd face the dog to him and the dog would stop coughing. He'd face the dog to the little old man and the dog would start coughing because he wanted his cocktail weenie or whatever. And when he demonstrated that, because that was how they put the pill in the cocktail weenie. And so he demonstrated this little old man. Sorry, my clock just started dinging. He demonstrated, he held the dog up, and the dog stopped coughing. Turns the dog around, and the little old Jewish man says, "Dad," and the dog goes, "Pat, pat, pat." The old Jewish man says, "Dad wouldn't poik no more, no more Moshe. Dad wouldn't poik." So, and I held on to that story because I've noticed those kinds of behaviors in all the dogs I've raised, that they develop their own ways of training the human being to, do whatever is appropriate for the human being thing. So I always find that interesting that, we assume that dogs are just pets. Well, they're not. They're symbiotes who train us to take care of them. And you also notice this with children who discover certain behaviors will always produce a response in the adult, and so they play for those response, and if they can't get a positive response, they play for the negative one simply to validate that they are alive, that they're there.
The
And so
system still works, right?
And some of those behaviors last even into adulthood, which we have seen. It's like if you can't get a positive response, you go for the negative one just to validate your existence. And so, I mean, this is a strange lead into it, but I read a lot of books by Dr. Eric Berne, who created this thing called transactional analysis, which was very controversial. It may still be, but essentially he said, I don't care what the causes are, I care what the behaviors are. And so his books were about script breaking, or about how you interrupt those behaviors. And I found this was very interesting, but and I'll tell you this story because it'll lead into where we're going. There was a woman I knew, and I won't mention her name because she might be well known, who wanted for her birthday to go to a place called Scandia's, which was a great restaurant in LA a long time ago. And she put away like 4 aquavits, despite my warning that aquavit is 200 proof or 192 proof, something like that. I said, as little, and she weighed 90, right? And she weighed 90 pounds. I said, don't do that. So, oh no, it's aquavit, it's fine. Whoops. So she spent the entire evening in the ladies' room throwing up. And, we spent a large amount on dinner for her, which she couldn't touch because she was too busy throwing up. So on the drive home, we had to stop every few miles so she could throw up some more. And finally, she started to apologize, at which point I said, no, it's all right with me. If this is how you want to celebrate your birthday, getting plastered on your ass and throwing up every few, that's fine. Just don't do it on my birthday. Right. She never drank around me again. So that's the example of script breaking, is that instead of playing into the script and giving the person the polite, response that feeds into the script, you break the script by saying, no, it's all right. If this is how you want to celebrate your birthday, fine. Just don't do it on mine.
See, that wouldn't work with a Navy guy.
Oh, no, of course not. I wouldn't even try that with a Navy guy. But it worked with her.
That would work with me, man. Hell yes, I want to spend my birthday. Let's do it again. And surprisingly, I mean, as a related notice, I noted online, for some reason, everybody gave me whiskey for Christmas this year. It's literally every gift.
But you see what I'm saying?
Bottle shape with a bow on it. Yeah.
But you see what I'm saying about script breaking is that if you play into the script, you validate it. But if you say something that is outside the boundaries of that particular behavior, then you dismantle that behavior in the person. So politically, we saw it when the lawyers said to McCarthy, "It's shine." That it said to he says, "At long last, Senator, have you no decency? Have you no shame?" That was script breaking, because instead of behaving like a terrified senator, whatever the guy's, I forget what his job was, but instead of behaving like he was expected to, he broke the man's script. And when you break, it's a very powerful technique. I wish I could learn it.
Yeah. But again, to do that, you gotta, McCarthy at least had some shame. That wouldn't work on the current administration, which has absolutely no shame or self-awareness whatsoever. So, literally watching the head of the Small Business Association this morning on Fox News talking about this is going to be a great year. Small business owners are actually looking forward to paying their taxes this year. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Whew! There is no self-awareness at all in this administration, and it's astounding. I mean, you got a president just slapped his name on the John F. Kennedy Memorial. I'm surprised he hasn't gone down and.
I wouldn't mind him having his name on the Trump Memorial. The sooner the better.
I'm happy to donate
an outhouse, a public pissoir.
Public urinal. I'm all about it. Yeah, but it's been an interesting morning. The last couple of days. I've not been well this month, and so I probably haven't seen much activity from me online, just bits and pieces. But end of the year is always kind of a lot of chaos for me, and then I haven't felt great this month. So I don't know. And better though. I'm feeling okay today. Like I said, I got a bit of a headache today, so the light's not doing me a lot of good. But other than that, things are all right. So what are we talking about, Bob? What's the subject today?
Oh, we're going to talk about what a brilliant idea it is for a president to design, build, and name a warship after him.
I just knew you were going there.
Oh,
Uh,
come on.
For those who don't know, both Bob and I are Navy veterans. So yeah, God, yeah,
I
it's
spent 2 days on the Yorktown once.
yeah, you know, you're more qualified than the president. But yeah, the thing here
Yeah,
is,
there was when I was in high school, there was a Navy Day where they brought in a bunch of high school students to
right,
spend
yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
couple of days on an aircraft carrier. It was fun.
They
Knowing
still do
who
that. I
I
mean,
knew in the aircraft carrier, they thought so too.
yeah, they still do that here and there. We used to do Tiger cruises where we bring families along and kids and for you know for a day cruise across wherever. I think I think last time when we came back from Iraq, we did a Tiger cruise for certain family members, adult family members, from the last leg from Hawaii to San Diego. That 4 days making the transit back to San Diego, and so that was kind of interesting, especially for guys that were you know in their probably some of them were in their 70s and 80s that had served at that time in the Second World War back in Korea or Vietnam, and actually had never set foot on a Navy ship since, and they got to come back. So that was kind of enlightening. The horribly spoiled ensign who used to brag about her daddy all the time. Her dad showed up, and he was this grumpy son of a bitch who we were all just dreading this guy being on the ship. And then 4 days, he was the greatest guy on the ship. We had a blast with this guy, but yeah. So I don't know. I'll tell you though, this is again there was a you know as I mentioned online. Hitler used to doodle battleships. He was an artist, you know, and a shitty artist, and they used to doodle battleships long before he was the Führer. And if you ever looked at any of his drawings or his old portfolios, you can still find them here and there online. I think a lot of them have been taken down, but he would doodle battleships and this and that and the other. And the Nazis dreamed of these giant, mighty weapons, and you know, and famously went broke building Hitler's wonder weapons,
The
the V2
Bismarck.
and the V3. Yeah, sure. And you know, there's a fairly compelling argument that's been made by a number of historians that if they hadn't invested money in the V2 and in the V3, which was a giant gun that was buried in a mountain, and in fact, many years later, Muammar Gaddafi tried to copy that weapon. And in the V1, if they hadn't invested that kind of money and they had built conventional aircraft, that they still would have lost a war, but they may have delayed its ending by several years and been able to sue for peace more on their own terms. And you know, and so when you look at those kind of things, there's only so many resources, there's only so many assets. The things that leave out when you say, okay, Trump's going to build a battleship. Well, first of all, he's not building a battleship. He's building what's essentially a large 30,000 ton destroyer. That's what he's building. He's not really building a battleship. But the word battleship sounds much cooler. And so that's, you know, and again, this is the level of shallow understanding that these people have. Um, the diagrams that they've shown to you, and that's exactly what they are. They're just diagrams. There's no design, ship design, warship design, design itself, and then warship design. This is a long evolved science. It's incredibly complicated. The engineering and hydrodynamics and the way things all fit together, those things are incredibly complicated. And there are science that have been developed over centuries. And nowadays, when you look at things like Trump's design, you look at what we know about that, the part that he presented, that the ship would be all things to everybody, that it would launch drones and it would launch helicopters and it would have big guns on board and it would have missiles and it would. And when you say missiles, there's more than there's land attack missiles. There are anti-aircraft missiles. There are missiles that can throw torpedoes and anti-submarine weapons out away from the ship. There's all kind of when we talk about missiles, it's not one size fits all. There are many different types of missiles for many different missions. All of those things require different sensors, different fire control systems, different intelligence. They're different missions. They require different launch points. They're not things that you do at once. They all interfere with each other. And when you start talking about adding large intelligence suites to a ship like that, the communication suites, because obviously they envision this as a flagship of some kind, that requires another whole suite of communications. It requires, in addition to its command and control suite, that allows for control of those other vessels in the battle group. All of those things, missions, are in conflict with each other, which is why we build many different types of ships, smaller ships that are capable of doing those diverse missions simultaneously as part of a large battle group or a surface action group, that sort of thing, rather than try to put all your eggs in one basket. The other side of this are the very, very severe lessons of history. At the turn of the last century, navies built their vessels based on something called the Mahan Doctrine. Alfred Thayer Mahan, he was a strategist, Naval Academy. He wrote a whole series of books and gave a whole bunch of lectures on sea power. And the long and short of it was that at that time, before aircraft, Mahan postulated that a nation's power was vested in its sea power, which is how goods and materials and war materials transited between nations on the ocean, because again, aviation was very much in its infancy at that time. Aircraft hadn't even been. And so nations took that idea and invested in what they called the first nation to do this was the United Kingdom. They invested in something called the Dreadnought class, which became battleships. They built these things. Nations went broke building these things. It was the first real arms race where nations built these vast fleets of battleships. When you talk about the Great White Fleet that Teddy Roosevelt sent around the world, that's what you're talking about, that class of battleship. This is prior to World War I. And again, nations literally went broke. That's why they called them capital ships, because they required this vast amount of capital to build. And their loss, if you lose one, it's a stunning loss to your military power because you have so much invested in this giant vessel. And they only ever really fought one battle, the Battle of the Jutland Sea during World War I. And it was it was indecisive. Neither the Germans or the British were the ones that fought the war or fought the battle. There were a number of significant losses. Specifically, the British learned that the light battle cruiser was a bad idea, and they lost a number of those. But it was the battle was indecisive. But what the military or what the navies learned at that time was that these vessels were too expensive to risk. You couldn't afford to lose one, and so navies began to build away from that. And then when the Second World War happened, of course, Pearl Harbor rendered battleships immediately and instantly obsolete. Air power, a battleship, even with the largest guns built, which were the Yamamoto's 18-inch guns, they could still only throw a shell accurately about 20 miles, 25 miles, something like that. And when I say accurately, accuracy with guns is, even today, with the largest guns the U.S. Navy fields are the 5-inch 54. These are weapons that are used for various things. But even with those guns and the accuracy of modern computer systems and fire control systems, the accuracy on that's not great. And so, and as a matter of fact, I'm a qualified gun officer. And so if you're engaging surface targets, you don't send 1 or 5 in a bracket and a salvo. You bracket them because you can't hit the goddamn thing that's moving in the water. The threats that you face nowadays in the parts of the world that you fight in, battleships become this. The larger the ship, the bigger the target. If you're transiting the Straits of Hormuz into the Persian Gulf or the Arabian Gulf or whatever the hell it is we're calling it this week, you're transiting through a very narrow 4-mile wide strait. The walls of that strait are lined with weapon emplacements. The most dangerous tactic that we would expect from places like Iran is called a swarm tactic, where they launch 200-300 small boats, high-speed boats, loaded with explosives and guns and suicide bombers. And if you get 150 of them, which would be at a tremendous kill rate, 50 of them still get through. And it only takes one against the hull to detonate. And so, again, the bigger you are, the bigger the target. One of those things, but it's enormously complicated. And what these people see is battleship. Bigger is better, more powerful. I just watched this special last night on the Texas, which is a monument. It's an old battleship. Texas was obsolete before World War II, but it's an older, smaller battleship that's parked in, I don't know where, in Galveston or some shit. And it's a monument like the USS Alabama. And people go and they visit that thing and they see those massive guns and that giant ship. And what they don't see is that nowadays ships like that are sitting on the bottom of the Black Sea because the Ukrainians are blowing them the hell up with Walmart level drones. The world has changed in 100 years. And that's the part that people like Trump don't see and don't want to know and don't have the experience to learn. People like Pete Hegseth with his little Nazi tattoos. These are the things that these people simply don't understand. But naval warfare, military warfare, warfare is an enormously complex endeavor. People study warfare for years, decades. Our generals and admirals are people who have been at this and professionally trained at graduate school levels in warfare. This is why when they say
they've learned how to play chess like a grandmaster. Only they're playing with real pieces.
Right.
And if you like, there are like gazillion possible games in chess because of the different moves. Now, with war, you're dealing with not just 8 pieces. You're dealing with or 32 pieces, but you're dealing with the whole range of capabilities that all the different pieces have. And on top of it, you have all the range of capabilities of all the people you have to staff all those machines, guns, etc. I mean, the complexities, you do not simply, your armchair warriors who played a game of Battle Zone or, whatever on the computer do not understand that there is a level of complexity so far beyond the understanding of the average person who hasn't had the years and years of training and discipline, the same kind of training and discipline that a grandmaster would require in chess. They don't understand it. And that's exactly what's going on with these people who are living in the Blight House. They simply do not get that these people, they're not just experts. They've been living with this for 20, 30, 40 years. They've seen the evolution of the machinery and the men and the skills. And the smartest thing that any president could ever do is call in the Joint Chiefs of Staff and say, educate me.
Right. Which is not going to happen with this administration. But as you said, David, and these are the things that people miss this. So you look at a ship, manning a ship, any ship, crewing a ship nowadays, and manning is an outdated term, so I just should say crewing. But
yeah,
when you look at a ship, you see engines, guns, you see Star Trek. When you looked at Star Trek, you looked at the ship. What you saw on that show was the bridge, and maybe sometimes Scotty in the little engine room, and you didn't see any of the rest of the ship. You didn't see what it takes. What you didn't see on that show, because it's not good television, and why the hell would you include all of this stuff? What you didn't see is that way back, all the things that it takes to man that ship, the training pipeline alone, to train that crew of 400 people on that starship, all those enormous skill sets that are required to operate that enormously complex machine in its environment. Now, that's a fictional case. And like I said,
have you ever been to Houston and taken the tour of the monitoring stations where they monitor the missions? Here's the row after row after row. Each guy is at a very complicated console looking at his specific piece of machinery, whether it's life support or engines or whatever. And the amount of human intelligence, and before they do any part of the space mission, the guy who's running the thing, the manager, he has to get a green as go from every single station, and that's what we never see aboard the Enterprise, simply because television there's no drama.
Because people want to see it. I was talking to a writer, television producer, director a while back who called me for advice and was asking me about a particular show that he was developing. And one of the things that he wanted was he wanted an intelligence specialist, which is why, of course, he was talking to me. And so this guy would be the one size fits all intelligence specialist. In every episode, they would ask this guy what he think, and he would give them the information, and that would be the plot point. They'd move on. And in reality, of course, it doesn't work that way.
Well, that was why you had Mr. Spock. That was Mr.
Right,
Spock's job.
right, exactly, which is why you had him. And so in a show like this, you have to. It's entertainment. You have to allow for this.
You want to cut to the next piece of action. You
Right,
don't want to have
Nobody
the whole
wants to
discussion.
watch real intelligence work, which is when we hunted down Bin Laden. That took 10 years. It took tens of thousands of people, and some of them doing very tedious jobs of sorting through information one bit at a time, or sorting through photos, or sorting through information, and then this stuff being aggregated together. It's an enormously complex process. That makes for bad television.
I just watched Zodiac last night, which is about the police procedural of capturing finding out who the Zodiac killer was, and it was it's a very. If you want to see Dirty Harry, that's not the movie. But if you want to see how it really works, it is a whole other process. And part of the problem was getting information from all the different jurisdictions. Here's Vallejo and Solano and one part of the movie is the guy. Well, you don't talk to me. You talk to the guy in this county, and you don't talk to me. You talk, and those guys weren't even sharing their information with each other unless. We'll give you this if you'll give us that. So, oh, really? And we're trying to catch a murderer, right?
Right. But again, and so when you start talking about Trump's battleship, the things that he showed you a couple of concept drawings of a ship doing multiple missions simultaneously that would be impossible to do simultaneously. You're not landing helicopters while you're launching missiles. Okay, that would be bad, right? But again, you're seeing this, and he's talking about all this power. But what you're not seeing, and what's not included in that, is not just the process of building the vessel. When you said about it's also all the stuff that will be required after the vessel is constructed, the training pipeline, the logistics pipeline, the deployment schedule, what ships it will operate, where it will go, what missions it will do. All of these things are why shipbuilding takes so long. Right now, you say, we're going to build a ship. Well, what is that ship supposed to do? See, I'll give you an example. When we built ships in the 1970s, when we designed ships in the 1980s and started building them in the 1980s, there were two primary classes of ships that were constructed during that time. The Aegis Guided Missile Cruisers, what were called the Ticonderoga class cruisers, and the Arleigh Burke class destroyers, the Spruance class destroyers, which were supposed to be, they were the same hull as the Arleigh Burke, same power plant, different sensors, a little bit cheaper to build. But those ships were designed for a specific mission. They were designed to fight the Soviet Union in the North Atlantic because that's what we thought was going to happen. Now, when you build those ships, and they're going to fight in that particular environment. And they could do other things, and they could obviously sail anywhere else in the world. But there's a difference. When I was on board USS Valley Forge, which was an Aegis Guided Missile Cruiser, a Ticonderoga class cruiser that was designed to operate in the North Atlantic. When I spent time on her, she was based out of San Diego, and she was operating in the Middle East. Now, for those that paid attention in school, there's an enormous difference between those two environments. And one of those, and where that comes into practical effect in things like engineering, is in desalinization of seawater. You see, the water in the North Atlantic is much denser because it's much colder. And so the systems that water were designed to operate in that environment. So were the cooling systems for the weapon system. So were the air conditioning, which takes chill water from the ocean, pipes it through the ship, and cools things off, et cetera, all the way down the line. And fresh water is not just for what you drink or make coffee with. It's also what cools your equipment. It's piped through your systems. It's used to generate steam. And there's all kinds of things that happen with that. Now, when you move that ship to a hot water environment like the Middle East, those systems are vastly less efficient. They don't work nearly as well. And the ship itself is degraded in its capability because it can't make enough fresh water to cool its equipment, to wash its people, to make fucking coffee, which is damned important to the U.S. Navy. All right. And so
Not just the
those,
Navy, excuse me.
right,
Life
yeah,
does not
right,
start
exactly.
without
The
coffee.
writers in general, right, exactly. But those are practical considerations. How many of you know that a helicopter operates differently in different environments? A helicopter at sea level in a cool environment, the air is denser. The helicopter has more lift, more power. It can carry more weapons, more people. It can do more things. But in an environment like the Middle East, the air is hot during the day. The air is thinner. The aircraft actually loses capability, loses liftability. It loses the ability, it becomes more dangerous to land and operate on a ship under those because the margins become smaller and smaller as the temperatures go up. And so this is just a taste. This is one of a million data points that it takes when you're designing these complex systems that you expect to operate in certain environments. And so when Trump talks about building a battleship, where's this thing going to operate? What's its job? What's its mission? What are you planning on doing with it? Because
Hudson
those
Bay.
things,
He's going to
those
operate
things,
in Hudson Bay to terrify New York.
but those things all determine what how you will build your equipment, how you will design everything from the props, the giant blades that push it through the water. Because again, if the water's hotter and less dense, then those designs have to be different because in colder water, it's denser. These are all physics. And of course, the people that are talking about designing this horseshit are the same people that sat in the back of physics class in high school and drew dicks on their paper, but their daddies were lawyers and shit, so they passed the class anyway. All right. So these systems are enormously complicated. Who do you expect to fight? There's a huge difference. When we built the Aegis cruisers, which are now obsolete, these were enormously expensive, enormously complicated machines. You have no idea how complicated these things were, especially when they were built in the late 1970s, early 1980s. With the technology of that time, the computer systems were enormous. But they were designed to fight what we thought was an enormous threat, the Kirov-class battlecruiser, the Soviet Kirov-class battlecruiser, which we were told by intelligence could put 200 or 300 missiles in the air at a time aimed at a nuclear aircraft carrier. We had to be able to defend against that. That's what the Navy told Congress. And that's how they got the funding for this. Many years later, after the Soviet Union collapsed, I was part of a group that examined some of the capabilities of one of those cruisers that had been decommissioned by the Soviet Union after the war and sold off to another country. And they weren't anywhere near that complicated. They weren't anywhere near that capable. But we had stretched the limits of 1980s technology to build a weapon that would counter that. And that threat wasn't even real, and it didn't only and even if it was, it had only existed for less than 10 years. And those ships were never used in that environment, and everything changed, and they were designed specifically for that type of threat to defend carrier battle groups. And within 10 years, all of that was obsolete because the world had changed so much. And now technology is changing even faster. And three guys with a drone launcher and a control unit and an FPV helmet have the ability to strike over hundreds of miles. They took out the Slava, the Moscow is what you would call it. It was a Slava class ship that was a cruiser. It was one of the most feared cruisers the Soviets ever put in the ocean. It was an enormous, complex, highly capable vessel, outdated by today's standards, but still extremely capable against traditional naval targets. And the Ukrainians took that out with a drone that cost less than $1,000 over a distance of several hundred miles. It was the flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. It's sitting on the bottom of the goddamn ocean right now. That's how quickly technology is changing. And so when Trump shows you pictures of this, I'm reminded of those of you that were around in the 80s. But another Navy boondoggle was this giant boomerang-shaped stealth bomber that they were going to build from the Navy that was going to do all kinds of things. It was called the A-12, and it was this boomerang looking, and they showed it. They periodically would somebody from the Pentagon would get out, and they did the same thing. They have an easel just like Trump did with a picture on it. And I forget how many ungodly billions of dollars they spent on this son of a bitch. And the only thing they ever produced,
$2 billion for each plane, and I think they built how many? 13?
No, well, with this particular one, the only thing they ever produced were those two concept drawings. They never built a single piece of hardware, and so because the world changed so much, they weren't trying to rip people off. They literally were trying to anticipate what the future would like. And while they were building this thing, the Soviet Union collapsed, and the threat that they were designing it for went away. And so we're talking about building ships that are designed or that are based on childish understanding of naval warfare by a guy that has literally a fourth grade understanding of naval warfare.
Come on. Come on. That's not fair. Fourth graders are smarter than that.
Right. Yeah, and so that's true. You got me there. But again, this is where we're at, and this isn't just. Again, I have people that yell at me online and say, "Well, you don't know." Literally, what would you think that this guy's an expert in this one area? Because he's not an expert in anything else. Literally, everything that this administration has done is similar to this. There's complete lack of. I mean, look at tariffs, for crying out loud, right? Right. Again, you had this guy brought in Elon Musk. And they formed Doge or Dodge or whatever the hell it is. And they hired some 20-year-old kid named Big Balls. And they went through and wiped out billions of dollars.
He never knows how to lower his eyebrow.
Right. And they did enormous damage to the government. And today the reports are coming out today that not only did they not save the promised umpty $1 trillion that Elon Musk promised you, they literally cost the government $1 trillion and did enormous damage and probably are responsible for tens of thousands of lives, especially when they eliminated programs like USAID. And again, this is the hallmark of the Trump administration. It is a comedy of errors. It is a dictatorship of buffoons. But that's who the Nazis were. And we look at Nazi science and we say, oh well, they built the V2, the A4, they built the technology. In reality, 90% of what these people did was an unmitigated failure because they appointed amateurs. You ever watch that show that's on television? I think it's HBO. Chernobyl, the one about the Chernobyl disaster. It's a miniseries, like it's 4 episodes or something. The one that struck me most about that series was the Minister of Coal. And this was a guy that never even seen a coal mine, but he'd been appointed as the Minister of Coal, and he had to go to the coal mine and tell the coal miners that they would be digging this tunnel underneath the reactor to install a cooling unit to keep the world from melting down. And he had to convince these guys of this, and he had never spoken to a coal miner in his entire life. And that is the kind of, and you look at that and you say, my God, these people are grossly incompetent. Well, man, take a look at your own damn government now, because we are in literally the same boat. I said yesterday, which has gotten me all kind of both adulation and an enormous amount of hate mail. Though was yesterday, everybody was up in arms because Mondami has appointed this woman Lillian. I can't pronounce her last name as fire commissioner, and so. Now suddenly, Elon Musk is all up in arms about she's not qualified. The only reason they appointed her is because he's a lesbian, yada, yada, yada. And of course, this woman is enormously qualified. But that's what I said. She's enormously qualified. She's a 31-year veteran of the New York Fire Department. She was the chief of EMS services for the entire city of New York. I mean, she's enormously qualified. People look at it and say, well, the only reason they hired her is because she's a lesbian. I said, oh, well, as opposed to what? There wasn't a white male Fox News commentator available, and so that's got me, I don't know, 1,000 comments on threads here, and half the people got it, and about half of them didn't. But again, this is the hallmark of the world that we live in right now. That it's being run by just rank amateurs, and there's this common myth that Americans tell themselves that anybody can be president.
Well, now that we've proven that, that's not true. But there used to be. I don't remember who said it. He says there needs to be a place for mediocrity, as if mediocrity was the equal to excellence. I don't remember who said it, and it's like, excuse me, do you even understand what the word mediocrity means? He was claiming that mediocrity deserved a place in government. If you want a mediocre government, no. Right, exactly. But what we have is something that's far more disastrous. We have government of the idiot, by the idiot, and for the idiot.
For idiots, right? It's exactly true. I 100%. Once again, David and I are in 100% agreement. I'd imagine that. There's a big shocker, but again, it is gross incompetence at every level. And the worst part about it is that fully a third of this country looks at that, and their answer is, yeah, but that makes you mad, so ha ha ha. What the hell kind of childish nonsense is that, man?
Let me give you an example. We had, and you were there, the 2015 WorldCon and the Hugo Awards, and the sad puppies and the pathetic pooches, whatever. And you and I, we set out, what are we going to do to make them mad? Because there was nothing at stake. So we made those wonderful little asterisks, which they read it and they took it as a far more of an insult than we ever intended. But whatever.
I was nice about it. You had me up on the Hugo stage there in front of the freaking world, and I was nice about it. Those things. It's funny though. Those show up. I go to different conventions and shit, and people show up and they've got one. And they want me to sign it. That's amazing.
But see, the thing is, there was nothing at stake. It wasn't world freedom was at stake. Our national economy wasn't at stake. It was just we were playing with something they set up, and we turned it back on them. That was fine. It was like, we made you own it, okay? So, but you don't do that with a national defense. You don't do that with your national economy. You don't do that with your national credibility, and you don't do that with soybeans and corn and wheat and all the other markets that evaporated, that we will never recover because other countries stepped in to fill the gap, and other people are not going to trust us ever again.
Right?
Never.
Why would they?
Not in our generation.
You'd have to be a fool to trust, as a foreign nation, to enter into any sort of agreement with the United States of America under current conditions. And it's not just the current president; it's the fact that even if you sign a deal with the current president, the next president is very likely to change that. And so this idea that one guy, or one person, male, female, whoever, the person occupying the White House should have unilateral authority to simply change international agreements without consensus, without a significant majority consensus of Congress and buy-off by the court, is ridiculous. It's insane. It means that nobody can trust us. It's bad for everything. It's bad for the stock market. Stock markets only go up on surety. The worst thing that you can have is economic uncertainty, economic instability. The stock markets, the only reason that you make money in stock markets is the ability to predict the future within general terms. And so when you have this kind of volatility where you don't know from 1 minute to the next whether we will be trading with Canada or not, which, I mean, yesterday apparently Trump decided he wasn't going to negotiate with Canada anymore because he was mad about something. You don't know from 1 minute to the next what our trade status with any other economy in the world is. These things are horribly bad for future investment. But again, it's bad for everything. We had a 5-nation agreement and buy-in from Israel. Now that's 30 years worth of goddamn work to denuclearize Iran. And I realize that nobody liked that deal. I get it. Everybody was mad. The liberals were mad about it. The conservatives were mad about it. But again, you're talking about pulling together not only Europe, but also Israel, the United States, and Iran. Get those 5 entities to goddamn agree to anything is a fucking miracle, right? And so we had done that. Was it perfect? Of course not, right? But nothing is. And you could adjust it as you went along. We would have been at least moving in the right direction. And the minute that Obama left office and Trump walked in, all of these goddamn white nationalist America First assholes blew up that deal. And there's absolutely, and now we talk about, well, we want to get Iran back to the negotiating table. If I was Iran,
Nuh-uh.
why the
Not gonna
hell
happen.
would I sit down with your ass? Right? You can't trust America to honor any agreement, no matter who the hell makes it. And so you're never going to have it's absolutely impossible to achieve the Trump administration's stated goal of getting Iran to agree to goddamn anything, let alone denuclearization, because why would they ever trust us in any fashion to keep our word on anything, right? And the only way that international treaties work is if you can trust the other side enough to get to verification. The whole trust but verify, Reagan, Gorbachev. We didn't trust them. They didn't trust us, but we trusted each other enough and the structure of the system to get to the verification process, which is also something that the Trump administration has blown up, because that nuclear limitation treaty required overflights, the verification parts of both nations. Our observers overflew the old Soviet Union, Russia, the old nuclear sites, and they overflew us. There were many times when I was in the military, especially when I was working in Alaska, where we were required to move materials outside because there was going to be a Russian overflight where they are required to be able to take photographs of military installations to verify that we are complying with that treaty. And Trump blew all of that up. So again, the world becomes a less safe place, a less stable place, because you can't trust America to honor its goddamn agreements.
Well, there is a theory that Trump is a Russian agent, that he is so owned by Putin. And clearly, all of this is in Putin's favor, that the more he weakens America, and also, the cancellation of the overflights means that Putin can do stuff without us knowing about it too.
Right.
So that was why he wanted it canceled. Right. If you look at it in that light, it's like we got a traitor sitting in the White House.
Right. And the worst part about it is I'd almost have more respect for him if he really was some kind of Russian sleeper agent and he was doing it on purpose. I don't think that's the case. I think he's just that fucking stupid. I think he's just that gullible and easily manipulated. I think that Putin's got him by his balls, by the ego, because Trump, you look at Mondami, he did nothing but talk shit about Mondami for how long? And then the guy shows up in the White House and he blows some smoke up his ass, and all of a sudden they're best buddies. He can't say enough nice things about New York all of a sudden. And I think you have to remember Putin's training. You have to also remember that Putin has a very competent and highly capable intelligence service behind him. They certainly have their flaws and their blind spots, but the FSB is quite capable, and they not only have the will and the hard-nosed determination of the old KGB, they don't have any of the old KGB's baggage. And one of the things that limited the Soviet Union was the massively inefficient structure of the Soviet government, and they were their own. The United States, we often talk about how we bankrupted the Soviet Union. We didn't bankrupt the Soviet Union. Reagan didn't win the Cold War. The Soviet Union collapsed of its own sheer massive incompetence. The problem with that is that when it fell apart, the people that actually were competent rose to the top of the new Russian Federation, and those people that are running Russia nowadays are the ruthless, efficient sons of bitches without any of the baggage of the old communist regime. When you see Putin, I mean, it doesn't really make a hell of a lot of difference whether Donald Trump is a deliberate Russian agent or whether he's just a Russian agent because he's an idiot. The end result to us is the same, and I strongly suspect that what you're really looking at is just masterclass manipulation. And I don't even know it's. Let me take that back. I don't even know it's masterclass. The guy is such an egocentric, shallow little man. Trump is that it doesn't require masterclass to manipulate his ass. He just needs something big and shiny and gold plated. I mean, for God's sake, man, if you're the World Soccer Federation and you're trying to get Trump to give you something, all you got to do is make up a fake peace prize and hand it to this guy, and all of a sudden you can have whatever you want. And I think that's really what's going on with the Russians, is that they find it easy to manipulate. The dumber you are, the easier you are to manipulate. And nobody should know that more than Trump, because that's literally his entire brand is milking the pennies out of the suckers, and that's literally.
But the thing is he doesn't recognize when he's being
He
manipulated.
doesn't recognize when it's
He's
happening.
too stupid. He is really
Right,
he can't read. He can't read,
Right.
and he doesn't listen to disagreement. The surest way to get fired is disagree with him, and he wants to be right about everything. He imagines himself to be a genius, and he imagines himself to be in perfect physical shape. And meanwhile, you look at the pictures of him, and this is a man who is, it's like the crazy old uncle who shows up at Thanksgiving, and it's like, and you leave the room rather than argue with him.
Right, and that's exactly it. I mean, and the worst part about it, though, is like I said, is that you have 70 million Americans who look at this guy and they don't see him. They see the Trump NFTs. They see him as this ripped, wedge-shaped dude in an astronaut suit and a cowboy hat, kicking the shit out of the commies. And then you got 70 million Americans who just don't give a shit. They just don't care. Right now, a perfect example is the Epstein files. I mean, this kind of thing would have torpedoed anybody else. I mean, goddamn Nixon would have rode this bomb down, and it wouldn't have mattered.
Nixon had the good sense to apologize when he knew. Not an apology, resign. Nixon resigned. Trump doesn't have a sense of shame. Without a sense of shame, he couldn't resign.
Right. Oh, and you're right. But the thing about Nixon is that Nixon, as big a crook as he was, Nixon wasn't stupid. Nixon was an enormously clever man, and he was a hell of a politician. And he was don't get me wrong. I mean, the guy was an absolute crook, and resigning without prison time was literally the best thing that ever happened to that guy, But the thing is that with Trump is neither competent nor intelligent. But he's buoyed up by this resentment of people that are what did Elvin Toffler call it? Future shock. That simply can't wrap their head around how much the world has changed since they were kids. When I just was looking at some dipshit conservative podcaster online here that's our age. He's in his 60s or 70s. He grew up at the same time that we did. And he's resented everything since the birth control pill. Because in his mind, the 50s he watches Mad Men, that's the time it's great. Women they know their place, and the white man is smoking a cigarette and selling car insurance or whatever the hell he's doing. And the world has changed since then. And it's not simple. It's, there's an old John Wayne movie, and don't get me wrong, it's one of my absolute favorites, but it is the epitome of what we're talking about, and it's McClintock. And it was provided by the family for a long time. But if you watch that movie, first of all, it was John Wayne had enormous control over it, and he used it to, the incompetent idiot governor is Cuthbert H. Humphreys, who of course was Wayne's dig at Hubert Humphrey, who he hated, the governor of California, the liberal governor of California, and halfway through the movie, there's this scene that actually explains the whole thing. And it's where the daughter, Stephanie Power, says, you know,
I'll
who
tell
are
you
they?
why I hated that movie
Well,
when you're
hang
done,
on.
but go
Oh
ahead.
yeah, hang on a second. Where she says to him, she's trying to ask her dad because the world is changing. The world's very different, and it's not like it used to be. And that's part of the movie is where they're bemoaning the fact the great, John Wayne is the great white father. He speaks for the Indians. He paddles his wife. He's this dinosaur, and so they set this up like this, and then you think that he's going to get his comeuppance. He's going to get straightened out. The world's changed. His way of life is, and instead, what happens is that he justifies it. And there's this scene where they ask him about it. His daughter asks him about it, and she says, "Who's he talking about?" And he says, "Well, me. They call me a reactionary." And you could very much see early 1970s politics right there in that scene. And he talks about how the world changed, and it's not, they're not real men anymore, and yada yada yada, and then the movie goes on to justify that. And of course, they end the movie with him beating Katharine Hepburn with a coal shovel, and then his own daughter, he hands his future son-in-law the coal shovel to beat his wife with, and get them women in line, and that entire movie speaks to the current administration of these dinosaurs who lived in a world that it really wasn't like that to begin with, but that's how that was the bill of goods they were sold by 1950s and 60s advertising agencies, and that kind of cultural.
All right, let me tell you where
Go
that
ahead.
movie lost me. And I liked John Wayne movies like The Searchers and Stagecoach and whatever. Now, John Ford, whenever he directed John Wayne, he knew John Wayne was a damaged human being, so he
Oh yeah,
always had the scripts. Where the Liberty Valance one, it's like the man who shot Liberty. Every single picture, John Wayne plays a damaged human being in some way.
right.
John Ford knew John Wayne.
Yeah,
Now, but in McClintock, which is not a John Ford movie, there's a scene where they're top of a hill of a big mudslide.
that's right.
And
The
John
mudslide,
Wayne,
the
right,
plague
and
pit
John Wayne says to somebody ought to hit you, somebody ought to punch you in the face, somebody ought to punch you, but I won't. No, I'm too big a man. I'm not. And then he says, the hell with it. And he punches. And
Yeah,
then
the
they
hell
get
I
into
love
where everybody gets punched. It goes down the mudslide except John
Right.
Wayne. And I said, that is the stupidest scene I've ever seen in any Western, because here's John Wayne, who's supposed to be the heroic, and he violates his own standard.
Right.
And of course, as you say,
But
John
that's
Wayne had
that's
enormous
the
control over it. That was John Wayne's fantasy.
But that's right. That you're exactly correct. That's the feel good scene. Somebody ought to teach you a lesson, Pilgrim, but I won't. I won't. The hell I won't.
Oh, the
Whack!
hell I won't. Pow.
It
Yeah.
attacks the guy
And
and knocks him down. And it's
I
not just, it's
consider
not just
that one of
anybody, but
the worst Westerns ever.
right. And it is,
So,
and that's why the Wayne family held it was held up for a long time after his death. But again, if you look, that movie came out in what 72, 74, and that's the same time that the Dirty Harry movies were coming out. And so if you look at that scene and you look at the scene in Dirty Harry where Clint Eastwood, he's got the bad guy who was robbing the store, who's black by the way, the bank robber. So he's got the black guy on the ground. He's got the giant gun, and then he gives the speech. Do you feel lucky, punk? And then
yeah.
this whole conversation with the giant gun, right? And so if you look at these podcasters and these alpha bros that are on social media today, people like Andrew Tate and stuff, you see exactly where their mentality, this MAGA mentality, came from. It came from that entire era of "Do you feel lucky, punk?" They all want to give this speech. They want to stand over the bad guy, the illegal alien, the guy that's stealing your jobs, and give that speech, and then punch him in the face and send him down the clay slide. This is literally the framing, that shallow machismo of. Remember, the whole theme of Dirty Harry was that the bureaucracy was letting the bad guys go, the criminals were on the street, and only the guy that broke all the rules and summarily executed people on the street was the fucking hero, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Let me. Last night I saw the movie Zodiac which is a terrific movie.
Yeah.
And halfway through it, there's a Dirty Harry. They reference the Dirty Harry movie where Dirty Harry shoots Scorpio, who was that, and it's like, and somebody says, and Mark Ruffalo, who's a great actor, says, we can't solve the case. Dirty Harry just solved it for us.
Right. Right. Well, and that's the thing, though. But again, now you see it with like ICE, right? No due process. They're performing for the cameras. They all got podcasts. They all got video. They're all giving the speech. The bad guys are the brown people on the goddamn ground. They running roughshod over our country. They're stealing our vital fluids. They're taking our jobs. They're raping our women and stealing our kids. It's the same goddamn story. Yep. It's the same story.
Yeah, those brown-skinned immigrants. Those brown-skinned immigrants are stealing our jobs, and they're so lazy that they're collecting Social Security.
Right, but in the 60s, in the 60s, of course, it wasn't the Mexicans; it was black people, because the black people were stealing all our jobs and were raping all of our women, because that was the height of the civil rights movement. Right when those movies were made, that's when the protests were happening in the streets. That's when the the American Indian movement had occupied Alcatraz. And so when I
was in my 20s, or before that, I was working as a busboy in a local restaurant, and we had a waitress who was a member of the John Birch Society. And I asked her, but she's a nice woman. As long as you didn't talk politics, she was excellent. I really loved her. She was wonderful until you talked politics. She had been living in London during the Blitz, and it had so traumatized her that, all right. So one day I asked her, well, what did you think of such and such a movie? And she said, oh, it's a wonderful piece of propaganda, isn't it? And I thought, yeah, if you look at everything through that filter, you can't see the point that was really being made about gunboat diplomacy and the fear that if we're living in the fear is owning us. We're not owning. Now, it's okay to be afraid of possibilities. Like where we live, there are bears in the woods, and I'm aware of it. But I'm not letting it own me that I go out armed, with the guns and the helmet every day. I said, if I were to see something in the woods, I'd go back in the house. So, and not to put too fine a point on it, Sean actually has had an encounter with a bear that did not turn out too well for the bear. So,
and you have to be careful. But you have to differentiate between real, actual, practical threats and threats that are things that exist in your head from popular culture from 40 years ago. And I can very much see the influence. Again, I'm not blaming Hollywood. I'm not blaming Hollywood's reflecting.
I would. Hollywood determines our culture. It determines how we think about things. The right movie at the right time can change everything.
Well, that's true. But the thing is that, again, some of those movies are reflections of society. Society sometimes a reflection of the movie. But you can see that what it is it's a good indicator, an instrument of that time frame. And you can look into that time frame and you can see the "Do You Feel Lucky" punk, the speech that Wayne gave in McClintock. Those movies, you can very much see the people that were young at that time now embody that sort of American mindset, that simplified, Dirty Harry, George Washington McClintock mindset in things like ICE nowadays. And so, and I see the ones that are not actually in ICE, but are ICE supporters online. I can see the same words, the same mindset, the same "Do you feel lucky" punk. Someone ought to teach you a lesson, but I won't. Whap, and you can see that same mentality coming back to the surface 40 years later in how people think and how they're influenced, and in this unconscious mindset that has shaped their lives, their entire lives, and not even this morning here. Was it this morning or maybe it was yesterday? And I don't see it now, but Stephen Miller, Trump's advisor, I don't know if you saw it or not, but the other day I saw a thread as a sideline here that said Stephen Miller is what happens when you bury a dildo in the pet cemetery.
I saw that
one. But Miller, it said this morning, it might have been last evening or something, but it said that imagine in America where we were, we won the wars, we split the atom, we went to the moon, we did all these things, and then we just didn't let immigrants in for 60 years. Imagine the kind of nation that we'd be today. And it's hilarious given that the accomplishments that he named were almost all, split the atom, dude. Where do you think those scientists came from? Right? Einstein was literally a Jewish refugee from Nazi fucking Germany, man. If it wasn't for him, you wouldn't have split the, and things like, all the scientists that were involved in that entire process were, a lot of them.
Yeah, let me give you
going to the moon. I'm like, literally, we landed on the moon because Werner von Braun built the goddamn rocket.
Right.
It's
let me interrupt you. Let me change the subject a moment or go back to something. Somebody posted in the chat. I'm telling you, boys, John Wayne was gay. I went to his pad in Brentwood to install two-way mirrors, and he came to the door in a dress. Now, I don't know who posted that or why, or who the original quote came from. But let me share this story with you because you'll get a laugh. I went to see Midnight Cowboy. Now, I had heard all these wonderful things about Midnight Cowboy, this movie. And I looked in the paper, and it's only playing in one theater in one Hollywood in all of LA County. And it was Tuesday night. And all the movies were going to change on Wednesday. So if I was going to see Midnight Cowboy, I had to see it then. So it was like the last screening of Midnight Cowboy on a Tuesday night. And the theater had maybe 20 people in it. And I'm sitting like 3 rows ahead of this row of gay boys who are, and remember, I was in my 20s, so I was not experienced. And I'm watching the movie, and it's pretty good. And there's a point where John Voight turns to Dustin Hoffman and says, you telling me John Wayne is gay? And from behind me comes this very clear, very effective, oh my honey, oh my dear, everybody knows about Miss Wayne. And the whole theater, and there were like 30 people, all broke out in enormous laughter, including me. And I have never been able to watch Midnight Cowboy. I don't even remember what happened in the movie. I've never been able to watch Midnight Cowboy. Because that's all I remember about the entire movie. That and Dustin Hoffman banging on the cab. But
I have to go back and watch that damn movie again.
So anyway, whatever. But the thing is John Wayne was the thing is I knew a gay guy who had a dancer who had worked in John Wayne Theater at Knott's Berry Farm. And apparently when he finished his whatever show they were doing, Wayne gave him a gift, 2 pearl-handled revolvers in a wooden case, 2 very expensive pearl-handled 6 guns. And that was because that was the way John Wayne thought, so anyway.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, again, it's you look at that, you look at how the lines between the culture of that time and what we're looking at now, and you can see very straight lines. How we wound up,
how we got here. Yeah, how we got here is we didn't pay attention to what was happening. Is we were so excited that we have home computers and lasers and cell phones and all this modern technology and the internet. And God knows, the internet, we thought the internet would make it possible for intelligent people to communicate with each other all over the world. And for the first few years of CompuServe, when we had CompuServe was a really intelligent place to be. But every year at Christmas, more people got modems, right? Or home computers. And so every January, the intelligence level of CompuServe would drop as more and more stupid people came aboard with their prejudice. And there's and all of the smart people, the publishers of Stereo Review and the pilots who in the aviation forum and the people who, really intelligent people were right there on the forefront of technology. And they'd leave. They would leave because bad money drives out good. Gresham's law worked with CompuServe. So, but the internet was supposed to elevate the global intelligence. But what it has done is a rising tide didn't raise all boats. It sank the, it's like the rising tide overwhelmed us with tidal waves of stupidity, tsunamis. Yeah.
You wouldn't remember, but the first time I ever spoke to you was on CompuServe. I was actually out on Shimia Island. You had a forum on CompuServe, and
Yes, I did.
we were talking about your book Death Beast, and
Yes.
which I still maintain has the greatest ending line of any science fiction book ever
Thank
written.
you.
And but that was the first time I'd actually spoken to you, and
I wanted people to finish the book laughing.
right, it was great. I still to this, and I won't spoil it because I'm not going to tell people. In fact, I think that was probably one of the first things of yours that I actually read that wasn't like a Star Trek adaptation. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy, right? You know. And it turns out you were alive on CompuServe, and I'm like, and this is like this famous writer that just talks to people like his fans and stuff. And that was I'd never
I'm
been to
not a
science fiction.
famous writer. I'm a guy who sits at a keyboard and types
Right.
stories, and lots of people read them, and that's fine with me. But the idea, and I noticed this with, and I loved Harlan Ellison. He was a godfather to my son. But I noticed this with Harlan and Isaac and Robert A. Heinlein and a lot of others, that fame puts you a wall between you and other people. And I realized the minute that happens, I lose my source material. I lose access to real people. I want to know, when I was a kid, I didn't have any friends. I am not giving up my friends for my career. I am not doing that ever again.
There's a lot of writers that are I think you become in some cases, you're like me, you're antisocial. You become a writer because you can't stand people. But on the other hand, there are plenty. There are a lot of John Scalzi's always a riot at conventions.
Scalzi is a great guy. I love
very
Scalzi.
approachable
I
dude,
cannot say it. I knew him. I met him when he only published Old Man's War.
Right.
And there was a lot of, what's the word? A lot of chatter, a lot of positive vibes about it. And I said to him, let me tell you, it works like this. You're the new writer. Then you're the new thing. Then you are the great new thing. Then you're the most popular great new thing. And then you've peaked. And then you are either a master who's, you keep writing and they respect you because you're a good writer, but you're never at your peak again. And I went through it, and I noticed John Farley went through it, and Orson Scott Card went through it, and I would watch as the new writers would come aboard and they would peak and they'd be not forgotten, but set aside for the next new thing, because the genre is all about the new thing. There's this genre magazine called Locus, which is the newsletter, they don't even mention me. I have not, I do not even get mentioned. It's like, I could be dead and I probably wouldn't even show up in the obituaries. That's how much they are focused on the great new thing. And it's a very boring magazine because it doesn't tell me about anybody I know. It's like, who are I don't know these people, which is fine. I'm glad that the field is evolving, and I'm glad that science fiction is continuing to grow and expand. This is what it's supposed to do. But I also remember that when I came into the genre, we respected the people on whose shoulders we stood. I stand on Heinlein's shoulders. And it's like, and I know there are people who are standing on my shoulders. I just wish they weren't wearing cleats. Once in a while, somebody could look down and say, "Hey, David, thank you." But you know what? I'm living in Vermont, the most beautiful house I've ever lived in. I've got a great son, great daughter-in-law, 2 beautiful grandkids. Even the dog pretends to like me. So it's like, I'm not trading that. I'm having a life I love living.
I've thanked you a number of times because I think you mentioned Herb Barley there, which
oh my God, I'm so sorry to lose him.
Sadly passed away earlier this month. You and Herb, I credit you two with me becoming successful was the fact that I wrote for a long time. I wrote the blog and I did different stuff, and you wrote me a letter, and you and I became friends, and probably a month, and that really boosted my confidence quite a bit. And then Herb Barley wrote me a fan letter. You know what it's like to get a fan letter from fucking John Farley? I about fell out of the damn chair.
Oh, yeah. One time I was on a panel and I discovered John Farley was in the audience listening to me and said, no, it should be the other way around.
How
the guy is
brilliant.
He was brilliant.
He was such a decent guy. But there's a lot of people, I run into a lot of writers. Especially
I took him to Disneyland. I did Spider and John were at the Worldcon, and which is in Anaheim across the street from Disneyland. And they'd never been to Disneyland. So we took them to Disney. And of course, the first ride is the Jungle Boat ride. And the guys, they do all these god-awful puns for like 15 minutes while you ride around. And it's a great ride. And we get off, and Spider's eyes are glassy. And he says, they get to do that all day long?
Right.
And I said, yes, they've been seduced by the dark side of the farce. And and and,
But see,
and wait,
you
wait,
say
wait.
that.
It gets yeah. And the spider
You,
gives me the look. He says, "How do you do that?" I says, "It's easy. The shortest distance between two puns is a straight line." They
see,
literally had to pry his fingers from my throat.
right? Yeah, but see, first of all, Spider Robinson's got no business banging anybody else for making punts because he's like the king of it. And
Yes,
second of
yes.
all, I will never forgive you and Larry Niven for the flying sorcerers. You know how many goddamn times I went through that damn book with a magic marker looking for every joke and pun in that fucking book? Jesus, man, you could spend a lifetime. You could write a PhD thesis on the puns and shit you two put into that damn
And
book.
James Blish, in his review,
Oh
James
my
Blish said
god!
we went too far. But the thing is,
No way. Yeah.
but we got that from James Blish, who in one of his books named the 13 priests after 13 other science fiction writers. Says, oh,
Right,
that's a
right.
funny
Yeah,
gag. We'll do that.
but nowadays it's I do run into some writers that are very stand up, and I get that though. I mean, you don't become a writer. A lot of times people become a writer because you get to work and you don't have to deal with people. You don't have to go outside. You can work in your pajamas all day. I mean, that's hello.
Do I
And
have to stand up and show you I'm not wearing pants?
but some writers are very gregarious and outgoing people, and are I mean, he's Charlie Strauss for a while, and he's and all the time. It's just ideas and very approachable dude, and Mary Robinette Cole. I can never pronounce her name correctly, but she's a very approachable, kind human being. And like I said, John Scalzi. I've never seen John Scalzi be mean to anybody. He's been a little short temper with people that are jackasses, but
John
yeah,
Scalzi has
John handles
always
it
got
very
the most
well.
wonderful. People will
Yeah,
send him hate mail, and his response, or the pathetic pooches, right? And his response is always, "I'm so jealous," because his response is not only clever, but
yeah,
it's not snarky in the way that it hurts
right.
anybody's feelings.
Right. But another one was Vonda McIntyre.
Oh, she was
That's
beautiful. She
another one
was
that I
wonderful.
missed tremendously. And it was so funny because in fact in 2015 there when I was in Spokane with you and I was a new writer and I'm walking along and all of a sudden I turn around and there's this woman standing behind me introducing herself and it was Vonda. And then I think we spent 6 or 7 hours wandering around the dealer's room together talking. And I have one of her kinetic sculptures up here on the
Vonda
shelf.
was one of my oldest and
Yeah,
bestest friends in science
yeah.
fiction,
She
and
was a very approachable.
I bought one of her first stories for one of my first anthologies, and she had a way of looking at things that was remarkable, and I miss her so much.
Yeah, she was an amazing person. Like I said, I have one of her kinetic sculptures up here. Actually, I have two of them. I have one that she gave me, and I have one that her estate gave me after she
Yeah,
passed
I
away.
got a little thing that her estate gave me after she passed.
Yeah,
That just
yeah. I mean,
hurts.
this is a person that met me one time that she apparently read my stuff, and who remembered me after she passed away. I mean, I was just stunned. I don't even think I was functional for 2 days after receiving it in the mail. She was an amazing
Oh,
human being.
let me tell you, I grew up in the science fiction genre, and I got to meet so many of my heroes. I never met Murray Leinster, but I met Asimov and Clark and Silverberg and Heinlein, and
Yeah, Bob Silverberg, boy, that was something. I met him, and that was.
oh my God, and so many of them are gone now, and it
Yeah,
hurts losing the people you admire. But along the way, I've watched other people come along, like George R. Martin and John Varley and Spider Robinson. I've watched all these wonderful new writers, and there's a whole like 3 or 4 new generations I haven't kept up with. It's like because I've been sick, we've moved. I've had other things on my mind. I don't have time to read anymore. But I just know the few that I have been able to keep with, I'm so amazed at what the whole genre has become, and I'm just
yeah.
so honored to have been a part of a literature that is so lively and evolving as opposed to so
Oh
many
yeah,
other
yeah. That
yeah.
was the real tragedy of the Sad Puppies and that entire incident was the fact that they wanted to put the genre back into that big three 1950s box of men in big armored suits and women in little Boris Vallejo bikinis and and what they miss out on is that the genre they're writing in has room for that if that's what you like and that's what they were writing, and
That
there's an
would have been
audience for it.
fine.
But there's also there's you're talking about a
If they
genre,
had just concentrated on writing the best
right,
stories they could, I would have said
right,
this is a great subgenre. But no, they started attacking other writers,
right, and they
and
start
that's
attacking other
something you
people.
don't do. You
And the
just
worst part
don't do
about
it.
it is they miss out on so much more. They hated the fact they hated, queer fiction and the fact that there's black
Women,
science fiction and I mean, literally, if you read the stuff that Tananarive Do writes or Stephen Barnes or Nora Jemisin, I mean, these are amazing stories. I mean,
yeah.
Jesus
Nora
Christ.
Jemisin has just been named a grandmaster. It's
Oh
like,
yeah,
and
and
that's yeah,
absolutely. I mean, oh,
absolutely,
God,
and totally deserved.
no,
But
yeah, no one has ever
let me
deserved
say
it
this:
more than
the
Jemisin.
whole sad puppy movement, whole sad puppy movement. Not only they torpedoed their own careers, but they torpedoed Baen Books. Is that they
Right.
were so identified as Baen Books that by the time that for the few years that followed, Tony Weisskopf was even disinvited as a guest of honor at a Worldcon
Right.
because
Yep.
you know they saw her as being part of the problem. And I had respected her a lot, but she did not. Apparently, she hated me. So I was like, okay, fine. She once told one convention that if I was going to be there, she wouldn't attend. Okay, great.
Whatever.
But the thing is Baen Books, which used to be a major competitor to Tor Books, because they said, well, why are they started playing Poor Victim? Why are we getting all this attention? It's like, well, just publish great books. That's all you're supposed to do. Baen Books is now and also ran. People do not go to Baen Books, and in fact,
I
have a book. I have a book
You,
that's going around looking at different publishers, and I told my agent, I said, you can submit this anywhere but Baen. I will not be. It's like, and that is actually when any writer says you can submit this anywhere but Baen Books, that's death, because that publisher is now being denied access, because that person could have the next Stranger in a Strange Land or the next Foundation series or whatever, the next Game of Thrones, and they're not getting to see it because that writer has decided I'd rather not publish at all than publish with you. So
right, and again, that's a tragedy. Again, you're talking about a genre that embraces the entire universe from the beginning of time to the big crunch. I mean, surely there's enough room in there for everybody. For God's sake, you want more. Jesus Christ, I want more choices, more diversity, more voice. I
they
want.
wanted to drive people out of the genre. You cannot drive people out of this genre.
I wanted
The
people
genre is an amorphous amoeba that just grows, it splits, it grows, it splits, it grows, it splits. So I mean, originally science fiction was this very small group of 90 writers. That's when I joined. Now we have over here we have the military science fiction, and we have the science fantasy. It spawned horror and fantasy genres, and science fiction itself there's the alternate worlds, alternate histories. There's the there's the whole time travel. There's the Harry Turtle Dove. There's
there's another one. There's another guy's very approachable. Harry Turtle Dove. I mean, he's a great dude, man. I love that guy.
Oh, I love Harry and Laura. I had a lot of dinners at their house.
Awesome,
one of the few things I miss about LA is spending time with Harry and Laura.
All this again, this is science fiction has always been a metaphor for larger things, and again, this is literally what you're looking at in the larger world. This small group of very sad people who want to drag the country, the world, back to a time that really never actually really existed, but it's a time that it
exists in memory. It's like,
right.
Yeah, if you ask me about the 50s, I think 50s were wonderful. We had all these great science fiction movies. The Cold War, I did not, I heard about the Cold War. Meanwhile, there's this great new movie coming out next Wednesday, right? So, if you ask me, the 50s
if you were white middle class American and you were male and you weren't gay and you weren't female and you weren't a minority, the 50s were fucking great, but if you were on the wrong side of the tracks or the wrong color, or you live, I live, I've said this several times on this podcast, I live in Milton, Florida, which is one of the last sundown towns in America, one of the last places that lynching was legal. And in the 1950s, those were common occurrences. And so if you weren't here and you weren't the people being hung from the trees, sure, the 50s fucking great. Why wouldn't they be? Again, these people watch shows like Mad Men and they draw entirely the wrong, entirely the wrong lesson from it. But again, this is literally what we're looking at. I look at Trump, I look at words from Stephen Miller, the people that are pulling the strings in the background, and you can see very much that mentality. As we started out talking about, you can see the same thing reflected in the science fiction community. And don't get me wrong, to those of you that are not familiar with the community, that haven't been to a Worldcon, you should definitely go. The vast majority of people are freaking awesome. It's one of the greatest experiences you'll ever have. It's a blast. You go in and there's everything from George R.R. Martin and his suspenders and his little glasses to 8-foot tall aliens in rubber suits that have scared the ever living shit out of you. It's great. It's awesome, man. It's a blast. But there's always going to be that small group of people in the back corner sitting behind their table of Robert Heinlein stories that they've rewritten 15 different times. It's the same stories with a scowl on their face, not selling a single.
Well, there's the whole Starship Troopers mentality, which created the whole military science fiction genre, subgenre,
Right.
and that's all they want is more military science fiction, more weapons, more bugs, more.
I don't mind a little military sci-fi once in a while. Me though, you and I've talked about it. I'm more interested in what happens to the soldiers after the war than I am the war stories. But again, if you like that stuff, there's plenty of it, But on the other hand, you're missing out on 95% everything else, and that's the problem with America right now. You're driving your giant coal roller truck. You're not wiping your ass because it's gay. You can only eat. These people. I ran into one of these guys, and I'm not. Wow, that's some Andrew Tate shit going on there. Holy crap, man! But anyway.
And then they wonder why they can't get laid, right?
Right.
It's the fault of the women that they can't get laid. Yeah.
Dude, maybe wash your ass, But again, it's this incredibly limited world that these people live in, and yet, they're the people that go to places like San Francisco, or they go to LA, or they go to New York, and they go to New York, and they go to Times Square, and they're mad because it's all a bunch of weirdos and crooks and shit, and they don't see anything else in the city. They don't see the history, they don't see the architecture, they don't see the vast. They see different faces and religions and people on the streets, and they're terrified. They're all different. These are weirdos. Because the little town that they come from in Arkansas is all white people that look just like them. And they're terrified by this alien planet that they've landed on instead of.
Oh, hey, let me share a story.
I go to New York, man. I'll tell you, my comments, I go places like New York and I gain.
You remember the 60s? You remember the 60s? You remember the 60s and the 70s? So you would go down to Hollywood Boulevard, and the entire boulevard was head shops by that time. You go right? And there would be but there would also be the porn shops, and there were this, and this Hollywood Boulevard was like Times Square, okay? Right. So, and you'd go down there, and and there'd be hippies, and there'd be the Gohons and Buddhists with their chanting, and right, and it would be a real, circus of horrors. But the best part was there would be these tourists from Iowa. And you always knew they were from Iowa or Kansas. And the wives would be in those god-awful print dresses, and the husbands would sometimes literally in the overalls, like from American Gothic. And they would be walking down Hollywood, and she'd be holding on to him. Oh, please save me from the hippies, right? It's like, and they passed the Scientology headquarters, and they passed right. And they want to see the glamour of Hollywood. Well, the glamour of Hollywood had left 20 years previously, right? But they're walking around. It's like. And you always knew who the tourists were because all of the normal people of Hollywood were kind of really we're giving them they were the oddest thing. They were the oddest things on Hollywood Boulevard.
And so it's great stuff. And again, there's two types of people in the world, and those are the ones that are terrified of the world, and those that embrace it, man. And look, I guess I've been submerged in too many alien cultures to hate it, because to me it was mind. And I came from a small town in the Midwest where everybody looked just like me, and when I got out into the big world, it was a hell of a shock for me. But boot camp with people from all over the world, including people that were not my color or not my background and not my religion and didn't speak
Oh
my
yeah,
language.
I
That was a
loved
real eye opener. And
I
those
love traveling. I went all over Australia, all over Paris and Ireland and Scotland and England and all over and Italy. Oh my God, I loved Italy
yeah,
and a few other places.
it's
And
even it's
and it
even in
was
America.
wonderful because I learned so much that people are friendly everywhere if you're friendly. And it's like,
Right.
and I learned about the food and and I'm on a train with a bunch of Italians and they're sharing the different kind of spaghetti with me.
Yeah.
And we're talking about spaghetti recipes. And it's like,
Right.
and I learned so much when I listened to people from other places.
Right.
And I've been to 49 of the United States in the United States. And it's like traveling all over the world because there's so many different cultures here. And one of my favorite places is Gallup, New Mexico. There's a restaurant called Earl's, and it's owned and run by the local Navajos. And they have a lot of, you go in there and it's mostly Navajos eating, but the food is spectacularly good. And you just sit and listen, and you are totally immersed in their world. You are a visitor to them, but you learn so much by just listening to the people around. And there are people who are terrified of anything different. And I've met them, and it's bizarre because you have this wonderful adventure called life, and it's very short. I'm 82, and it's like, no, I need another 82 years, right? But it's like there is so much to discover in this world that if you're not listening, you're not paying attention, you're missing everything. I went to Hong Kong. I shouldn't have because it cost me a lot, but I lived in Hong Kong for a few months, and it was great because I learned so much about China and the Chinese, and I got to visit the giant Buddha at Lantau Island. I saw Hong Kong Disneyland, which was also interesting.
Right.
But
best part about Hong Kong, and people don't use them too much anymore, are the old British ferries that go back and forth across the. I could just sit on those and ride all day. Hey, we got to get going. We're half an hour past. I appreciate Bob letting us go, but
Bob has to go to the bathroom, so you can see him bouncing up and down. Come on, so we got to let Bob go.
I already went. Didn't you notice that little there? Usually,
I have to finish organize. You can see I've organized a little bit here, but I have to finish. Today is the day for.
Are you paying attention to the chat?
Yeah, I have been. Yes.
They are excited as hell about you being at RadCon.
Well, that is great. We're going to be at RadCon, and if there's a city left when we're through, we didn't do enough.
Well, hey, we built nuclear bombs, so if we can survive that,
we will have a great time at RadCon. I'm looking forward to it. So.
Now, Jim, are you part of that we?
Yeah, we'll talk about it afterwards here. If I
okay. I'm sorry.
I wasn't.
All right, let's call it a day.
I'll talk to you about it afterwards. Tentatively, yes. But I need to talk to you a little bit here. So.
Okay, so we can do that. And hey, guys, thank you all for coming. And as you know, Alternative Liberties 2, we have closed, and we still got about 40,000 words we're buying that we haven't bought yet. And but in the ones that we've bought, I just want you to know that Harry Turtledove character that they alluded to, he's going to be with us on that one.
And you've also got a great story by my buddy Malcolm Crowe. He was very excited. So, yeah.
Oh, that's your Malcolm?
Yeah, that's my Malcolm.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I have made it clear that he has to make it on the quality of his own words, not because I am doing anything to encourage his career, except encourage him to be a better writer. So,
that is so spectacular because he got I don't even remember all of the names, but Yahoo.
Yeah. St. Malcolm is awesome. That's Fred's comment. St. Malcolm is awesome, but I agree, Fred. Thank you.
St. Malcolm.
Well, this is good. Somebody saying something about Amtrak credits. He should use them to get out there. And that is it. I have more than one occasion driven from the hotel out in the sunny spring air that is January in the Tri-Cities to pick up somebody at Amtrak. Hey, if you guys don't believe it, it's been in the 40s up here, guys, middle of December. So it's a great weather. So we're closing you out. Thanks for coming, and be well, guys.